everyone, and welcome to Global Outlook. I'm Mary Sitt. What's the state of the economy today? Job growth is slowing, but demand for workers is strong. Inflation is high, but it was higher last spring. Job openings are high, but they're falling. Well, here to shed some light on all this is Professor Richard Gosselin. He's the professor of economics here at HCC. He's also the founding president and board member of the National Economic Teaching Association. Dr. Gosselin, Professor Gosselin, thank you so much for being with us today. You need to unmute your mic.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Sorry.
Yeah. So tell me, what is going on with the economy now? Just give me a little brief overview.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly true. I mean, you captured it quite well, that inflation is up there. It's, in Houston, it's knocking on the door of 9%, perhaps a little bit over. But the labor market's still fairly tight. And I know that seems kind of contradictory, right? Because we're seeing a fairly tight labor market. But I think that, when all the dust settles and we get out of this inflationary spiral, which hopefully we get out of soon, I think for the students' perspective in terms of job outlook, there's a number of really good jobs that are out there and that require some of the same skills that we're training our students for right now. So
what are the industries that are hiring? What are the really good jobs out there?
It's not so much as industries per se, but I think if you were to look at, the top growing ones, the ones that are projected to be the biggest growth areas in terms of overall job growth and median pay, you could probably lop them into, about 5 or 6 of these categories. Management analyst is on the top of the list for sure. And then right under there, personal financial advisors, and that's going to grow like gangbusters over the next couple of decades. Medical and health service managers, and I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. That's the fastest growing sector in the economy. And then information security analysts and then software developers would round out number 5. I don't want to go through the whole list, but that would be like the top 5 that are growing a lot faster. And
when you say information security, does that mean like cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And HCC has training for that. So, there's 2-year certification for that. And then, of course, students can go on to a 4-year school and get a bachelor's degree. And I think one of the things that students are sometimes, fall into the trap of believing that they've got to crank it forward and they've got to go beyond the bachelor's degree. There's still a lot of good areas where you can get good, solid entry-level careers right with the bachelor's. So they can leave HCC, go to a 4-year institution, finish that bachelor's in a couple more years after they've already had their 2-year stint at HCC, ideally speaking, right?
Right. Well, I'm curious, you said financial planning is going to grow like gangbusters. Why?
Well, it has to do more with the baby boomers. I mean, the baby boomers first started to retire in 2010. And the last ones are going to retire in 2030. So that's still 8 years away from when those first ones start to retire. And so over that time period, those people are really going to need, some help. And the folks that are right behind them as well. Now, the folks that are behind them are a little bit of a smaller cohort. But remember, it's not going to get smaller and smaller progressively right away.
Right.
If it's okay, Mary, I think one thing that students probably should look for is to go visit the Bureau of Labor Statistics and take a look at the job outlook. They just go to Google, type in job outlook handbook, and right there's a number of little columns that they can click on to find out what are the fastest growing industries and by degree and by occupation. And that's very helpful information for students in planning their careers.
So are we going to be in a recession or about to be, and then we'll get out of it? Or what's your prediction?
Yeah, that's probably the case. I mean, there's always folks talking about how, this is somehow this is different than any other recession. It is to some degree because the pandemic was sort of this artificial thing that got created. We have to call it artificial because, I mean, it came from a laboratory, right? It was this strange black swan event that no normal person could have predicted, right? But the way in which the central government responded to that through this, the big outlays that took place in terms of aid. And I'm not saying it wasn't justified, but it was on a fairly big scale. That's kind of what triggered all of this inflation in a delayed way. But yes.
But hang in there because it will improve. It won't last forever, right?
That's
How?
exactly.
Tell me about the field of economics. How has it changed over the years, and how has that impacted your teaching?
Well, I think the field of economics itself, outside of academia, is a little different story in terms of what's going on in the classroom. But there's two major events that took place that really kind of shook the discipline to its core. And the first is the field of behavioral economics, which took place really in 2003, when the Nobel Prize was actually awarded to a non-economist.
Wow.
It went to a psychologist by the name of Daniel Kahneman.
Mhm.
So that really kind of shook the micro foundations, and that's changed a lot of how economists are looking at the world. That's number one. And then number two, which is probably a little bit more obvious and on most people's radar screen, is the 2008 financial collapse.
Yes.
And that required a complete reworking of how we think about the macro economy, particularly with regard to money and banking and monetary policy. And to tie it in with your other part of your question in terms of how it's affected the classroom, well, that part is actually forced principles of economics authors to change what they write. And in fact, the new book that we've adopted has done that, where it looks at monetary policy in the way that the Fed actually conducts it, not sort of these antiquated tools that we've talked about in books past. So that's a big deal. And then sort of the art and craft of our teaching has changed.
So the textbook has changed recently. You just introducing a new textbook that
Yeah,
addresses all those changes, right?
that's
And
correct.
what is it about economics that provides good training to students?
I think more than anything else, it provides you with a different kind of a framework to look at the world.
Mhm.
So it's a little different than studying finance or accounting. We have very specific skills that you learn. If you're an accountant, you need to know your debit from your credit, right? And
Right.
make sure that you've got your asset balance sheet all in order, that assets are equal to liabilities plus net worth. But econ is more about conceptual things and how to solve problems in the use of logic. So I think it's a very practical discipline. But probably students shouldn't ignore some of those business skills. So they probably should take some accounting. My advice to most econ students is take about 12 hours to 15 hours of accounting. They don't like hearing that when I say that, but they should do it because it'll improve their marketability to get a job.
Do you feel like every student should take an econ course, whether you're an economics major or not, just because it's good for you?
Yeah, I think it'd be great. I think every student should take at least one or two, at least macro, to understand how the macro economy works, but even micro has some very practical aspects to it that can really help you understand how markets work.
Okay, so those of us who, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No,
For those of us who have not taken an economics course, what's a good book we can read? That's not like a textbook, but just a book that would just,
Oh,
give
yeah.
interest.
There are tons to mention, and he who has choice has pain. But I think clearly at the top of the list is Freakonomics. It's a great popular book, and many of you all have probably heard of it before. What's great about it, there's not a single graph or equation in the book, at least not that I'm aware.
I love it. My kind of book.
Yeah, it makes for pleasurable reading. And it's the book you can find on the bookshelf at Barnes and Noble. And
Okay, final question, Professor Gosselin. You've been teaching for about 33 years. What makes a good teacher?
Yeah, I think what makes a good teacher is making your discipline practical and convincing students that the things that you're talking about have relevance in their everyday, ordinary life. And you really have to go to pains to make sure that that happens, because it's not fair to teach students things that they can't see themselves actually using. And so that's, I think, the pinnacle of what a good teacher is, no matter what it is, whether it's economics or biology, chemistry, or physics.
Professor Gosselin, thank you so much for being with us.
You
And I'll go out and get that book.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you so
Take
much.
care. Best wishes.
Coming up next, an international student from Vietnam who will tell us her secret of success here at HCC. Stay with us.
Natural disasters are a fact of life in the U.S. And between activities and school, chances are you won't be with your kids when they happen. Will they know what to do? Ready.gov/kids can help your children feel prepared, not scared. So talk with your family today.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples apples and bananas.
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Sometimes what you need just shows up. Houston Community College has your back, whether you're knocking out some basics or upping your game for a better job. Enroll today for spring classes and frame your future with HCC.
Our next guest is from Vietnam. Nguyen is studying child development here at HCC. She already holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Houston downtown and graduated from there with high honors. T, thanks for being on with us.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
So tell me, why did you decide to go to HCC now?
Actually, to be honest, I chose Houston Community College because it offers affordable tuition fee. So after I get an associate degree from Houston Community College, I can transfer to a university. So 2 years at HCC, I spent like 16,000. However, in a university for 2 years, I spent like 40,000. And furthermore, like HCC offer a lot of programs that I can choose from. So I can consider, like more choices of careers for my future.
So HCC is really a great bargain for students. Not only that, they have good quality teachers and you learn all the same basics that you would somewhere else, right? Before you transfer to a four-year college. So you're studying child development. What do you want to do with that degree once you get into your four-year degree with child development?
Yeah, I chose child development because I'm really interested in how children, are developing each stage of their life. And for my future, I want to be a kindergarten teacher because
nice.
Children are very adorable, and precious.
Until you have a classroom of 28. No, that's true. You are. You're helping shape their minds and their habits, and your teachers are very influential for young children. But tell me, what has your experience been like at HCC so far in terms as a student there, now a transfer student?
So I have been in HCC like for maybe 2 years, and teachers are very nice and helpful. When I don't understand some assignments, I email them and they reply my emails really quickly. And if I have some problem with my visa, I email my DSO and he's really nice. He's friendly and he helped me a lot.
This is your coordinator for your for the visa and all the issues of studying here as an international student. Is that right? DSO?
Yeah.
Okay.
DSO.
Okay. How have you managed being so far away from home? How do you deal with things like homesickness and just missing your family?
Actually, when I used to stay in Vietnam, I stay by myself. So it's not hard for me to stay away from my family. However, when I miss them, I can use social media such as like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, or Viber to call them. Yeah, I feel more connected with them by social media.
So you stay in touch with them. And your grandparents, did you say that your grandparents, you had some relatives here in Houston, is that right?
That's right, yeah. My grandparents, my aunts, and my cousins stay in the US. I mean, Houston.
So that helps a little bit, right? Okay, what sort of advice would you give to other international students coming to HCC and, for the first time, perhaps? What would you tell them?
Oh, so as an international student, I think students should get good grades. I mean, international students should get good grades. Because when you go back to the country and then they renew their visa, they will check if you have good grades and then they will decide if they should give you a new visa. And so international students should, manage their budget because they can spend more out their budget and they can, worry, they cannot focus on their study. So I think they should set their goals and determine to achieve them. And the most important thing is health. I think they should take care of yourself. They should take care of themselves. It's healthy to get enough sleep and work out regularly.
You know what? I like your answer because you're my first student who's ever told me that. Take care of yourself and take care of your health. But that's really important, right? Especially in the time of a pandemic. If you don't take care of yourself and get enough sleep and exercise and eat right, you're going to be grouchy. You can't focus. That's a great answer, T. I think you're the first one who's ever told me take care of yourself. That's terrific advice for all students, really, not just international ones, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges you've experienced over here and how have you overcome those challenges?
Oh, actually, like the first challenge when I came here is about language. When I get Houston University of Houston downtown, I couldn't understand anything at classroom, and then I thought, and it was like I should try to make more friends, like American friends, so I can improve my language and I can understand their culture better.
And so was it difficult to make friends or were you seemed pretty outgoing and friendly? Or do you have to force yourself to just like go up and talk to other students?
First, it's hard, but
Yeah.
if you try, you should start a communication first, and then it will be easier. They will come and talk to you.
That's
Yeah.
also really good advice. I think it's really easy if you're, let's say, Vietnamese or where you're from, to find that community in Houston because we're so diverse. You can just stay in your own little bubble, right? And not break out and talk to people who are born here in this country. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you like best about studying at HCC? Your most valuable experience here at HCC?
I'm sorry.
What do you like best about studying here?
Oh, I like HCC because first, teachers, they're friendly, they're nice. Second, there any program I can choose from. Actually, before I chose accounting, and then I was like, it's not the right major for me. So I chose another major, like child development.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to switch majors when you aren't sure what you're doing. And you've got
That's
very supportive teachers.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, T. Nguyen, for sharing your experiences with us.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next, finding jobs for people with disabilities. Best Buddies will explain after this.
La forma en la que ves tus opciones puede cambiar en un minuto. Houston Community College te ayuda a encontrar tu camino con más de 200 programas que te abren oportunidades a puestos de trabajo. Inscríbete hoy para las clases de primavera y enfoca tu futuro con HCC.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
That one day at PE when they were yelling at me and then you just linked arms with me. I don't think you know how much that helped me. I finally knew that I had somebody.
The job market is strong, but what about for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities? COVID has disproportionately affected them, but one person and one organization is doing something about that. Here to tell us more is Casey Rankin. She's the manager of job development at Best Buddies, Texas. Casey, thanks for being with us.
Hi, Mary. Thanks so much for having me.
So tell me about how do you create meaningful jobs for people with disabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So our program, like you said, we're working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And just like the rest of us, they have goals, they have desires, and they have an idea of what type of employment they want. So really, I think it's getting into the nitty gritty and helping them decide, what's going to be best for them, and then being their champion and their advocate when it comes to finding employment for them.
Okay, so as the manager of job development, what are some of the things, how do you work with employers to convince them hey, create some jobs and meaningful jobs, not just counting pencils or something boring like that, but how do you match the best buddies with the employers so their ability to match with the employer's needs?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. So I think, in the last couple of years, we've seen a massive focus on, diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace. So even, a year ago, there weren't people in organizations that were strictly focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I like that you point out, we're not looking for people who just want to shred paper anymore.
Right.
People with disabilities are some of the most untapped talent, not only in our nation, but in our world. So it's reaching out to those companies that have initiatives to employ people with a diverse background, and then sitting down with them and maybe doing a workplace analysis and figuring out what their needs are. Can we carve out a specific position? Are there things that aren't getting done in their organization that we could, potentially bring someone in with a disability in to really specialize in that type of part of their company?
And Casey, when you talk to employers, what are their fears? Are they afraid about safety issues? Like, oh, what if that person, does something unsafe, not knowing that it's not safe to do that? Or what do they tell you? Their concerns?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think safety is one of the biggest concerns that come up with employers. But fortunately, there's insurance for that. And you can't discriminate based on for insurance purposes. So someone with a disability is covered the same way you or I would be covered. But also, I think there's a lot of anxiety. People don't want to say the wrong thing. People don't want to be insulting. So we as a company come in and we offer diversity, equity, and inclusion training for people with disabilities so that we're not only setting our participants up for success, but we're setting our managers up for success so that they continue to hire people with disabilities.
And then do you also sort of educate the managers and the employers on the extent of the person's abilities? Like, just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't do A, B, and C. And this particular person is capable of this range of, do you go through that too, so that they are more comfortable and can find jobs that are suitable?
Yeah, absolutely. And we never disclose someone's disability. That's always going to be up to our participant. But I always like to say, if you've met someone who has autism, you've met one person with autism, because they're all different, right? Just like we are. So we go in and we like to set them up and tell them what their strengths are, how do they learn, what type of environments are best for them. So yeah, we offer all of that information so that they have a full scope of the participant going in. They know exactly how to support them.
Okay. So what kind of how do you match the best buddies? First of all, who qualifies? Not right, you get to qualify to be a best buddy to get a job. So tell me.
So there is criteria for admission. You do have to be 18 years or older to be in the Best Buddies Texas program. And you also have to have a primary diagnosis of intellectual or developmental disability. Now, those are the two main factors. You also have to have your own transportation to work. We do not provide transportation, but we do offer travel training. So if you need to learn how to use a rideshare program like Uber or Lyft, or if you need to learn how to use public transportation, we do offer what we call that curb to curb training to help them get to work, because that can be a big barrier.
Okay. So the other day I was waiting at a car dealer, right? And it was a long, long wait. And there was the sweetest young man. He just had his best smile. And he was walking around with a cart with snacks and had a big sign that said, "Free snacks, help yourself." And then it had an envelope that said, "Tips appreciated." And I thought that was so cute. And he was rolling around and people weren't flagging him down, but he was just walking to all the people in this big lobby waiting, because there weren't little vending machines anywhere, and just smiling and offering. And I thought that's really nice. And he was having fun with it. And we, the clients waiting for our cars, were having fun, like, meeting somebody and smiling back and encouraging him. I thought, that's the best thing about this dealership, that they hired this guy to do this. I was really getting upset that they were taking so long, right, to change a battery, 3 hours. Right? But I thought the one good thing they did was it really created a good feeling in me as a client, that they did this. Do you tell that to employers too? Like, hey, this will help you with your clients so they like it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you bring into that story, because it doesn't only increase employee morale, but like customers love to see that as well. I always say disability knows no race, it knows no religion, it knows no gender. We are all touched by disability. And so seeing that representation in the workplace, I know that, my participants love to see when companies are really taking that initiative to hire people with disabilities. But yeah, me personally, I'm like, I'll give you my business if I see representation out there. I love seeing companies move forward and recognize that talent.
Casey, how difficult is it for you to match the buddies with the jobs? Are there more buddies available than jobs available, or is it a pretty even match?
So every person's a little bit differently. So, I work with a lot of transition students who are just getting out of high school. And so my participants that are wanting to start their work like most of us do in food service or retail, that can be, an easier placement. But I'm also working with people who want to do, more difficult jobs, people who want to work in more difficult industries, finding an office job, becoming an HVAC employee, doing facilities management. So just like those jobs are harder for us to find, it's a little bit harder for them to find because those job descriptions, are a little bit more specific and require more skill. So it just kind of depends. It's definitely a case by case basis.
Okay. And what about the pay? I mean, I was looking on your website and a big chart of the typical pay nationwide, and then how much pay they get, if Best Buddies places them, which is a lot higher.
Yeah.
Tell me about the pay scale and what that
So
is.
we're definitely looking for competitive and integrated positions. So by that I mean that they're making over minimum wage, and a lot of people don't realize, but still in the United States, it is still legal to pay people with disabilities sub minimum wage.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. It's
Why?
crazy.
Why is it legal to do that? Because they're still, human beings doing a job for the company, right?
Absolutely. It's just one of those loopholes that haven't been addressed just yet. And so we as a company are making sure when we find those employment opportunities that they're working, at least 16 to 20 hours per week. We don't want someone going in and working, 4 hours a week. That's not competitive. And that makes it really hard to master your job and to learn skills. Right. But like I said, we're also looking for jobs that are above minimum wage. So I think most of our participants here are making at least $10 an hour now. Some are making $12, $15 an hour. So we love to see it. And we're talking to them, constantly about what their goals are. Do they want to make more money? And how to have those conversations with their managers, just like all of us are doing.
That's great. What if somebody works at a company, is listening to this right now? They're not in HR, but they're going, we should do something. Do they contact you and you'll sort of connect them and train them and all that, or what's the procedure?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach out to me directly, Casey Rankin at bestbuddies.org. You could reach out to us through our website at bestbuddiesjobs.org. But yeah, I think there's tons of different ways to get involved. Some of our employers who might not be ready to hire yet help us with mock interviews. They talk to our participants about their jobs. They volunteer. We also offer diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings for those that are looking to get more information and to start that conversation. Or if you're ready to hire, let's do it. Let's jump right in.
Casey, why is this so important? Why is it important to the Best Buddy? I mean, if they have all their needs met and they have money to live on, and they don't need the money to pay the rent, why is a job important?
I think a job's important, just like a job's important for all of us. It's a source of community, right? It helps build your self-esteem. We all want to get up and have something to do each day. So even if their bills are taken care of, maybe mom and dad can help out with that. Maybe they're earning some type of other income. Everyone wants to get up and have a purpose. Right. And I think that's really important for them to live that dream and to have that purpose.
That's great. What is the National Disability Employment, it's a mouthful, Employment Awareness Month, and why is that important?
I'm so glad you asked. So the National Disability Employment Awareness Month, or otherwise known as NDEAM, is every October, and it's a focus on employing people with disabilities. So this year, on October 20th, we're going to be hosting a networking and panel event with BNY Mellon, and it's going to be at the Walter P. Moore Center. It's free to the public, free happy hour, so free food and drinks. We're welcoming anyone who wants to get to know a little bit more. We're going to have panelists from our participants and our managers to be able to offer a little bit more information on their side of things, of what it's like to either be a participant who got a job or be a manager, and what it's like to support someone with a disability.
That's great. And to get more information, we can just go to your website, bestbuddies.org, and find out more about this event. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. bestbuddies.org/Texas, or you can follow us on any of our social media at bestbuddiestx.
Okay. Casey, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Mary.
Okay. That's all for this edition of Global Outlook. We'll see you again on Comcast Channel 19 every Friday and Sunday at 7:30 a.m. and p.m., plus Saturday at 10 a.m. Or you can download a podcast to go on our website at hccs.edu/podcast, or watch the full video version on HCC's YouTube channel. I'm Mary Sitch. Thanks for joining us.
La forma en la que ves tus opciones puede cambiar en un minuto. Houston Community College te ayuda a encontrar tu camino con más de 200 programas que te abren oportunidades a puestos de trabajo. Inscríbete hoy para las clases de primavera y enfoca tu futuro con HCC.